Okay, David Aguayo. This is my friend from the Bay Area. One of my athletes, 3DMJer. David Aguayo is quite possibly the smallest bodybuilder I've ever worked with. So on stage, um, about 100 pounds. About 100 pounds on stage. And to say that David has it hard is an understatement. Very, just naturally a really small dude. And again, sometimes I catch myself doubting myself because it's like, dude, you're 160 pounds on stage. That's a lot smaller than a lot of the top guys in your sport where you necessarily made for this. But um, seeing how hard David has it, and then how hard he works to combat that, that's very motivating. Just seeing David do all the things that he does in his everyday life just really changed my perspective on a lot of things. So he really motivates me, not in your traditional fitness motivation, like scream at me to get that last set, yell up, 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 even though that's exactly what I was trying to do. Uh, Motivation Monday, Instagram, hashtag this, hashtag that motivation. Just seeing him do his things without fear and going about his business and just working hard. Um, just it it makes me want to work and really not take anything for granted. So David, yeah, David got to spend a few days with myself and Leanna out here in Colorado. It was a pleasure having him. A lot of good training sessions, good times, a lot of laughing. It was awesome. Um, so that was my highlight this week, to be quite honest, was David. In regards to the mini cut, it's going quite well. However, I think I kept getting just questions after questions, and I mean that in a good way, because I want to do something different for this log. It's been going well. It's just very non-eventful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down, go over some of the top questions that you guys asked in the last video. Remember, we kind of suggested bringing that up. Um, so yeah, you will in a minute here. You will see um, myself just kind of talking and talking and talking about non-contest prep, um, non-contest prep fat loss phases, and yeah. So just ignore the fact that I'm in a scary-looking hotel, that I look like a magician, and hopefully you get some good information from our Q&A. So yeah, next week we'll be back to the regularly scheduled program with a physique update. But I hope you guys enjoy this, and if you do, definitely let me know. If you have more questions, again, let me know. But we got some good ones in here. So yeah, that's it for me. I'll leave it here, and I'll let the other stuff roll. Okay. So first of all, I have something in my hand. I think that's chocolate, by the way. But we have been sticking to our mini cut. So you can see diet soda. I didn't get as much footage as I anticipated getting. No, actually, as you guys might have anticipated me getting. But a few reasons for that. We're on the road this week, as you can see. And then also because David was in town, I wanted to spend more time with David, less time behind the computer screen, less time behind the camera, and just catch up with him. So I did bring up the point that I wanted to talk about just fat loss phases, non-contest prep diet fat loss phases, which include mini cuts, which include I guess extended fat loss phases that go a little bit past the mini cut. So first of all, before we start getting through the questions, once again, let me clear it up the difference between a fat loss phase and an extended fat loss phase and a mini cut. So a mini cut is just one of those things where, say when you're gaining, you do your best work between 180, 190 pounds. You kind of gain in between those two ranges, and then once you get to the point where you hit your top end weight, 190, you clean up back down to 180, rinse and repeat, and you just kind of keep doing that. And this is especially true. This is especially something that someone who would want to maximize muscle gain is going to do, right? So that's your mini cut. It's one of those things where you're basically just losing fat so that you can continue making progress, and you just keep going through that cycle over and over. An extended fat loss phase is one of those things where I guess there's a non-competitive deadline at the end. There's a certain look that we're after, and perhaps that person that I gave as an example, 190 to 180s, where they do most of their work. They might, instead of just getting to 180, they might continue marching down to say 175 or 170 or something like that. So it's one of those fat loss phases that you kind of want to cash in on what you put together, and it's not necessarily a contest prep either, where we're dieting for 20, 30, even more, sometimes 20, 30, 40 weeks to get to our goals. So yeah, those are the two fat loss phases: mini cuts, the rinse and repeat thing, and then the extended fat loss phases where, say that person that for the first time ever, they're like, okay, I want to get my abs all in, going to cut for the summer. That would be an extended fat loss phase. And again, mini cut is you're doing it just so that you can keep making the gains. So let's start off with the first question, which is about mini cuts. High days refeeds on a mini cut, not at all. Weekly, every few days, with highly aggressive low days. So again, I think first of all, the whole the mini cuts as a whole should probably last no longer than maybe 8 weeks. If you have to spend more than 8 weeks cleaning up, then chances are you probably got a bit too carried away with your gaining phase, and that should be you should revisit that strategy. But in general, I think during the start of any fat loss phase, typically is where we will see some really good weight loss, some really good fat loss happen. So I think that you don't necessarily have to be very aggressive the way that I did it. It's something that I did because, first of all, I knew that there would be no adverse effects from it, as in mostly from a mental standpoint, that I would be okay, that I wouldn't go off the deep end because I was so restricted. So most of the time, I would say you don't need to start off very aggressively. Perhaps over time, if you find that you can handle that, and it kind of expedites the process for you, then sure, do it. But be wary of about making that decision. You're just generally, especially after gaining for a number of months, you will find that your body's quite receptive when it comes to fat loss, cooperates quite easy, and it's usually quite predictable. So you shouldn't have too much of an issue losing. On the mini cut, the refeeds and the refeeds, I think in general they should probably be there on a weekly basis in some form or fashion, simply because that's about how long a typical microcycle lasts. So from a performance standpoint, I think it makes sense to have that kind of rotate around your weekly work, so that you can not only necessarily maintain performance, but see it increasing. And that's about the typical rate that I do use with people, is every week or so. And then also it just kind of seems to work that way, and that our minds are kind of just wrapped around this week, this concept of a week, and it's nice to have these little landmarks there. That every Saturday, maybe every Sunday, maybe every Saturday and Sunday, you're going to bump up your calories just a little bit, mostly carbohydrate, of course, and that helps you adhere through the week. So of course, again, since for most of us, especially when it comes to such a short fat loss phase, and because we're usually at the higher end of our body fat settling point when we do start a mini cut, adherence is not too much of an issue. I'd say the main incentive, at least the first few weeks, is going to be just performance based, making sure that you're recovered and recharged, and that you're ready to proceed with the next week's worth of training. So yeah, I do think under most circumstances, having a refeed during a mini cut is a good idea. And perhaps maybe not the first week if you feel like you get something from that. But in general, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having them from the get-go. All right. Question 2: for an extended fat loss phase, do you recommend the same deficit and amount of cardio as in a mini cut? So that one really does depend. I think that because most people towards the end of an extended fat loss phase, they're definitely hovering around the lower end of their settling point. Perhaps a deficit, um, as aggressive or as assertive as you saw early on, perhaps wouldn't be the best thing. So I would say no. That's probably the biggest difference, is that a mini cut's generally going to end after about 8 weeks in most cases, whereas an extended fat loss phase is one of those things where typically you go until you get to your goal weight. And often I think we're talking about anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks, which is ironic that used to be about the going rate for a contest prep diet. But that's also why bodybuilders in general just um, weren't as lean then as they typically are today, especially when it comes to natural bodybuilders. So yeah, I would say that because you're digging a little deeper, getting to the lower end of your body fat set point, you're going to find that perhaps a smaller deficit would be better under those circumstances. Okay, next question is actually very well thought out. I like this one. So, Berto, I really like your approach to begin the mini cut with a more aggressive caloric cut, and followed by increasing the intake to a more sustainable level. My question is, do you ever employ this approach when it comes to a longer fat loss phase or contest prep diet, or would you continually gradually decrease those calories except for the times where you're on a diet break or eating up to the show date? Um, so Jason, I think that that would not be a bad way per se to start any of those other fat loss phases. But I would be wary about doing that with an extended fat loss phase or a contest prep diet, simply because you're going to go for a while. At least for me, one of the incentives of coming out the gates quite rapidly with this was, the fact that, oh, there we go, held that burp in, was the fact that I knew that it was going to be over um, pretty pretty soon, and that it wouldn't go past a certain time. Whereas with a contest prep diet, that's usually one of my things. It's in the back of my mind that wow, this is going to go on for 5, 6, 7 months possibly. So I think I would do it now, to be quite honest. Start aggressively and then back off. However, I don't necessarily think that's something that's appropriate for someone who's going through their first contest prep or their first few contest prep diets. I think for someone who's done it a few times and kind of understands um, how much they can handle, and how they respond to restriction, how to work around it, perhaps that might be a good approach, but definitely not for a novice, especially when it comes to the contest prep diets. But in general, I wouldn't be too against someone doing that for an extended fat loss phase, and certainly not for a mini cut, so long as it's not too assertive to the point where it comes back to nip them in the butt. But yeah, excellent question. Really, really like that. And it's really annoying the way I'm kind of rocking back and forth in this chair. Let's get to the next one. I think we have time for about two more before this gets way too long. Okay, and I didn't say everyone's name, but this name I'm going to say because it's pretty awesome. So it's Cody Boom Boom McBroom. Cody Boom Boom McBroom. Excellent question here. Um, what's the minimum and maximum time lengths for gains and cuts? I can assume it varies from person to person, as some are susceptible to fat gain quicker than others. Is it justifiable to give these individuals shorter gains with more frequent, shorter lasting mini cuts along the way to optimize insulin, nutrient absorption, and less fat gain along the big journey? Thanks, Alberto. Appreciate it. Um, that burp came out. Okay. So, Cody, I'm going to assume that I can call you that and I don't have to say that name every single time, Cody. So, when it comes to the gaining phases, I think some people are just more susceptible to fat gain than others. But I think in general, the biggest issue is just a poor planning, poor execution, and lack of patience. To be quite honest, like a lot of this goes for most of us. I think at some point that's kind of how we just created our plans. So personally, I've noticed that over time, the longer I've done this, the more patient I've been with my gaining phases, so the less fat I tend to gain on the way up. And this is definitely one of those things where, for one, my planning looks a lot different, but then also my ability to just kind of stay on track and only take what I need in terms of calories during those gaining phases has been something that I've just executed a whole lot better lately, more so than I did 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, what I like to see people do is at least commit to 6 months of non-hypo caloric living. So eating enough to train, progress, and build new muscle. So 6 months is about the minimum, all the way up to a year. A year is probably the longest I would let someone go. With that, in this cut of this last gaining phase, I probably would have done it for a year had it not matched up the way I wanted, but it would not have matched up the way I wanted to go about things for next season. So anywhere between 6 months to a year, you might see that initially, like, let's just say again your ranges are from 180 to 190. That's where you do your work from when you're going from gaining to cutting. You might see that initially, like, man, in 6 months you got up to 190, but then the next go around, like, you pushed it up to 8 months, and then 10 months, and you get better at that, and then you might find yourself that, shoot, 6 years from now, like, you spend a whole year not dieting, and you went from 180 to 185, 186. So over time, you kind of learn to refine the process so you can spend less time not dieting. You only take what you want, what you need, not what you want. Only take what you need, and you kind of line it up with your current gaining potential. So unfortunately for me, that's not quite that much anymore. So I spend more time gaining, of course, than I used to 5, 6 years ago, but I gain less because just wouldn't do me a whole lot of good to put on 20 pounds over the course of 6, 8 months. Not that that would help much people outside of beginners. So the minimum 6, maximum year, and again, you'll get better at pushing towards the higher end over time. All right, let's get to this next one. Okay, next one. These are freaking awesome. Questions: how would you go about an extended fat loss phase or mini cut? Go straight back to a surplus, go back to maintenance, or go with a reverse diet kind of thing? Thanks so much, thanks so much, love the videos. So we're talking again mini cut or fat loss phase. So there's no recover portion to this because you didn't really go through a contest prep. If you find yourself recovering, then there's something broken with what you did, or needing to go through one of those, or maybe just might be one of your first few fat loss phases, and mentally it's just was a little overbearing, and that's okay. You'll get better over time, but usually you don't need to go through a recovery phase when you're going through an extended fat loss phase or a mini cut. So what do you do? Do you go to maintenance, or do you go into a surplus? So if generally someone who's mini cutting, again, they're just mini cutting so they can get back to gaining, and that's how it goes. When I get to my bottom in weight, I'm just going to get back to gaining. And then you might have someone who, say, they went through an extended fat loss phase. They got the body they wanted for, say, the summer, for whatever, maybe a string of photo shoots. Maybe they just wanted to look this way for a while. Maybe for that person, it'd be okay for them to be at maintenance. So there's really no right or wrong. You don't necessarily need to go through a recovery phase. It's just more so your choice. When you get to your end goal, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay here, or do you want to keep, or do you want to go back to gaining? So that's totally personal preference. There's not a lot of recovery that has to go on. The only thing I would say is that if you are the kind of person that once they come, you shouldn't be, but if you have a tendency to slip up post fat loss phase, it's okay to make a little buffer for that. So say you were dieting on 2,000 calories, your maintenance is estimated to be 27, 28, and you put yourself at 2,400 just because you know that there might be a social situation or two during the weekend where you might possibly overeat a little bit more than you would like. So again, no right or wrong. It's kind of up to the user at that point. Okay, and then the last one: person, could a male, we'll just say person's natural set point be at 16? Okay, because that's 16 body fat. I get it. 16% would be quite lean for a female. Could a person's natural set point be at 16? A little bit of belly fat and love handles. Can you lower it over time? So your physiological set point is your physiological set point. That's just there. You're not going to change that. However, let's get into settling points, because that kind of involves a lot of other factors that contribute to the current body fat that you're at. And the main one I want you to kind of focus on is the environmental and behavioral factors that go into the kind of body fat that we carry most of the time. One thing you will see over time is that you're just going to get better at, especially if you stick to this for a while, at just having less contrast between your fat loss phases and your gaining phases. You're going to see that behavior doesn't differ as much. And that's just something that comes with time. So you'll just be better at making the right decisions. You'll be better at kind of figuring out, I guess, what works for you. And that can mean a number of things, from like your caloric needs that you should be on formally, to how to marry this into your personal life and all that stuff. So your physiological set point, I'm afraid that's just going to be what it is. However, over time, you will see that you're just going to get better at living the lifestyle, if you will. So yeah, that's and that makes a huge difference. I'll tell you that. I know a lot of people who are not necessarily very lean by nature, but they keep themselves in like some damn good shape year round. And it didn't happen overnight, but over the years they've learned to modify their behavior, and now, like, you would never have guessed that at some point, they were 250, 260 pounds. You know, that's something that obviously took time, but if you stick around long enough, you kind of learn to really customize approaches for yourself, especially when it comes to, again, just marrying your body comp wants with your actual real life. So yeah, I'll leave it here. If you guys like this and this was awesome, or not awesome, but somewhat informative, kept you busy during your cardio, I'm not going to say like the video. That's totally up to you. I won't force feed that one. But if you do like it, and you got something from this, or perhaps you feel like you want something answered, please leave it on the comment section. And what I'll do is, my next video, we'll wrap this up, and we'll go. I'll keep this away from my journal logging, and we'll basically just have one video purely about this stuff. So in a more formal setting, perhaps. So yeah, if you have more questions, just put them down, and I'll get that out as soon as I'm back home. All right, I'll leave it there.